Tomorrow night we'll learn at 8:30.
All right. Okay, you're on.
Okay, Masechta Shabbos, Mem Gimel, Mem Beis, 42 Amud Aleph. So yesterday we said that Shmuel felt like Rabbi Shimon by Dover Shemis Kaveh, that if you don't have kavana, like when you drag a bed across a room and it makes a ditch, your kavana was to drag the bed from one corner to another, not to make the ditch. There's a machlokas Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon regarding Dover Shemis Kaveh, and the Gemara learned out that Shmuel held like Rabbi Shimon. Asked the Gemara, "L'meimer de Shmuel Rabbi Shimon Svirle? Are you correct that Shmuel holds like Rabbi Shimon?" V'amar Shmuel. We have another statement of Shmuel. Mechabin gachelet shematechet b'shus harabim. If someone is walking b'shus harabim and they see metal, like a burning metal, it's like white hot. So you're allowed to extinguish it. B'shvil shlo yizaku bo rabim. You're allowed to extinguish it so that the public, now this is not because of pikuach nefesh. This is because a burning metal is not fire. And that kind of extinguishing is not osur min Torah. It's only osur min Rabbanan. And Rashi says, so there is, when there's a potential damage to the Rabbim, the Shavuos Rabbanan is lifted. We have the same concept. If you remember davening in Young Israel of Hancock Park for many years, we used to have a shamus, and we used to, Amir La'akum, telling a non-Jew to do something for you on Shabbos is prohibited only midrabbana. But let's say let's say people were freezing cold in the shul, you could tell the shamus to, adjust the thermos. You could say it's too cold. You didn't even have to hint. You could tell them directly because it's only midrabanan, and where there's a nezek l'rabim, as we see here in this Rashi, there's no gzeira on the shvus. Same concept. Avaloka chela shel eitz. But if you were walking through Rishus Harabim and there was a piece of wood that was, like a coal, that you couldn't extinguish, because that's an isur midoraisa. And Isaac died the Savalak Reb Shimon, and if you're correct that Shmuel holds like Reb Shimon, see, the extinguishing, he's not extinguishing because he wants it to extinguish. He's extinguishing it because he's wants to prevent damage to the public. So it's a davar shemis kaveh. And it should be permitted if he holds like Reb Shimon. So the Gemara says, yes, the davar shemis kaveh and so like Reb Shimon. But there is another concept called malacha she'ein tzrich legufa. That is, all of these malachas on Shabbos had a certain way if you did it in the Mishkan. And if you didn't do it exactly the way it was done in the Mishkan, it's a malacha she'ein tzrich legufa. There's a machlokas Rabbi Reb Shimon whether it's usher or potter. Here he holds that even though it's not exactly the way, because the kibui in the base of Mikdash was done, was to create a coal. You extinguished something because you wanted to make a pecham. You wanted to make like a coal. Well, here you're extinguishing. You want to completely extinguish. So and by Malacha Shein Tzrich Legufa, he holds like Rabbi Yehuda. Now, the Havamina of this Gemara is, the way it started the question, is that they're equal. That Davar Shein Miskavein and Malacha Shein Tzrich Legufa is the same thing. But that's not the same thing. You can have cases where it's Malacha Shein Tzrich Legufa and not a Davar Shein Miskavein. We learn it out from here. Amar Avina, Hilkach, Koitz B'Shus Rabim. Let's say there's a thorn in the Rishus Harabim, and you don't want people to step on it. So this also, you can't carry Dalad Amis, but less than Dalad Amis you can carry. It's only less Pachos Amis, it's Nisud Rabbana. But to avoid a damage, you can be over this Gzer Rabbanon of not going Pachos Me'arba Amois. And by a Carmelist, let's say we're at the beach, where Chachamim said that this is a Carmelist. Really, Minat Torah, you're permitted to carry there. But the Chachamim said it's a Carmelist you're allowed to carry. And if you find a damaging thorn there, that you can carry even more than Dalad Amis, because of this concept that Mishvus, the Chachamim were not goys. Okay. You can pour hot water into cold water. You can't pour cold water into hot water. They're both permitted. Shulchan Aruch says, very interesting, if you have a kli that was on the fire, so it's a kli rishon, you take it off the fire. It's still a kli rishon, and there's hot water there. You can't pour cold water in there. Now, if it's a ton of cold water, as long as the kli is not on the fire, you're allowed to pour a lot of it in there. If the hot water is in a kli sheni, the whole thing is mutter. You could pour whatever you want in there. Now, the Gemara says, "Bamed varmun bakos." That's in a cup. Avol bambati, in a bathtub. You can only pour hot water into cold. But you can't pour cold into hot. Why is that? Because hot water rises, so there's going to be more problem in terms of heating up the cold water. He says you can't even pour hot into cold. And on Rav Nachman, I look Rav Shimon ben Nasya. So Rav Yosef Lameimar Seifel, which was like a bucket that you used to wash yourself in. Hareyu Kambati. And therefore you couldn't pour any kind of water into that. Amrlo Abaya, Tony Rav Chia Seifel ain't a kambati. But Rav Chia said, no, it's not like an ambati. Initially, I'd have a mina that this Seifel was like a bathtub. And if we hold that the halachos of Nachman, how are we ever going to have that b'Shabbos rechitza b'chamin leka? And you'll never be able to wash yourself on Shabbos, even with hot water that was heated up Erev Shabbos. We learned yesterday that you're allowed to wash yourself with hot water that was heated up the next day. But if this whole thing was prohibited, we wouldn't have been able to do it. So that's why the Gemara says, "Misavis Rav Shimon on Seifa Koy Aresha Koy." Rav Shimon ben Manasseh didn't say his din on the Seifa, only on the Reisha, where it said Beisel Matirin. By a kos, right, in a cup, it said Beisel Matirin Ben Chamin L'Toch Ben Tzon Chamin, and on that Rav Shimon ben Nasya Omer Tzoin and L'Toch Chamin is also Osir, Osir Tzoin L'Toch Chamin, but not by a Sefer. So Lame Rav Shimon ben Nasya Omer K'Beis Shammai. So does that mean Rav Shimon holds like Beis Shammai? Hochi Kamer. No. Lo Nechel K'Beis Shammai Beisel Ben Dover Zeh. There was no machlokes between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. And that was the Mesorah that Rav Shimon ben Nasi had received. We saw that Rava, when he was dealing with a kli, not an ambati, he didn't make a difference whether he poured hot water into cold or cold water into hot. Militari Rav Chia, and from the Baraisa of Rav Chia, Nois Nodim Kiton Shemayim, a person could take like a tea kettle with water in it, l'toch seifel shemayim, whether or not in that kli was bein cham l'toch tzonim bein tzonim l'toch cham. So Gemara says that's no raya. On Rav Ashi, that the shiny also the mifsek kli. That's not like what we were saying before, like pouring water directly into water. Here you're taking a kli filled with water, and you're putting it like with cold water. You're putting it into let's say a kli that had hot water in it, and there's a separation between the walls of the kli. So that's no raya to our case. Omerlei ma'ara itmar. No, it wasn't talking about putting the kli into water. It was actually pouring. Right? Ma'ara means pouring. And that's why we ended up with the halacha like I quote. Mishnah. Ha'ilfis, the akadera. So if you have a dish, a pot that was on the fire, so it's a kli rishon. Shevira merutochim, and you took it off the fire, it's still bubbling, and you took it off even before Shabbos. Lo yitel l'sochon tavlin. You cannot put spices into this, but when it becomes Shabbos, because a kli rishon, as long as it's boiling. Rashi says roteach, and we're going to learn that as long as it's yad soledes, the tavlin is going to get cooked. So it says in Shulchan Aruch, also is tavlin b'kli rishon, afilu achar shavir me'al. If you had a pot on the fire and it was boiling, and you took it off erev Shabbos and it's still boiling, and now Shabbos starts, you may not put spices in there because it's called zman shayad soledes bo.
What happens if it's a kli sheni?
Kli sheni, there's no bishul. So that's
There's no
why
bishul. Huh?
we learned yesterday, kli sheni, there's no bishul by kli sheni.
I'm saying, so even if it would be yad soledet bo, you could still do it, correct?
So that's why I said, Walter, there's a machlokes in the Rishonim in Yordeya about this very issue, like what you just brought up. It's a kli sheni, but it's still yad soledes bo. So that's why some are machmer to wait till a kli shlishi. But there's certainly people to rely on that there's no bishul by kli sheni, no matter, even if it is yad soledes. It's just the concept of Chazal. They understood that once you've put it into a kli sheni, so the everything is cooled down. So the question is, what if it's still yad soledes? But yad soledes is the temperature. So that's why there's a problem there. But the Gemara itself yesterday learned kli sheni is not mavashel. So we have to rely. So for example, putting salt. We're going to see in a minute. Salt is also considered a tafshil.
No,
Tavlin, and pepper and other spices. So the problem is like this. When you take the soup ladle into a kli rishon and you pour it, so that's called irui kli rishon. So that has a din of a kli rishon. So you have to. The soup ladle certainly has a din of the kli rishon if you took it directly from the kli. So, but once you pour it into the other kli, now you have a kli sheni. And then there's less of an issue when you put spices in it regarding bishul, because you're dealing with a kli sheni.
Why wouldn't the ladle be considered a kli sheni? It's the same thing. That you take hot water, you put it into a different pot, and you pour the pot, and then you pour the hot water into the tea. What would
if you take your pot and pour it directly into the bowl that's also called irui kli rishon, And the din of the stuff in that kli, even though it's not a kli sheni, it's the din of a kli rishon, because you pour directly from the kli rishon. That's called irui kli rishon, pouring from a kli rishon. It's a special chumrah that it creates a kli rishon below it. So that's why you have to do it in an intermediate step. You don't pour directly from the ladle. The ladle, you have to take it out of the kli rishon, and then when you put in the kli sheni, according to most, it's considered now kli sheni. But that's why this is complicated, because there are shittas that hold in that situation the kli sheni might have the status of a kli rishon because of this irui point. So it's better, but we're not noig like that. We're noig that the soup dish is already considered a kli sheni. But there are chumras regarding that. But I thought you were asking good, because what's the din of a kli sheni if the temperature is yad soletispo? So, because if it's based on temperature, you could have yad soletispo, even a kli sheni. But Chazal understood that a kli sheni, once it's been cooled in the walls of a kli sheni, doesn't have the ability to put a vashel. It's a din. That's why some of the Ramon, the Shach, and the Taz in Yoredeya have a problem with that and say that everybody holds that a kli shlishi will not be mavashel. Some hold by a kli sheni stillness. That's why there's people who are machmir even regarding a kli sheni. But I just quoted you the halacha in Shulchan Aruch directly. The Maran Shulchan Aruch holds that you cannot put tavlin into a kli rishon, even when you put the kli rishon not on the fire, because it's still got the status of a kli rishon, as long as yad soletispo. So if you took a pot that was on the fire and boiling, and you took it off the pot, you took it off the fire, it's still in the first kli, and now it's not yad soletispo anymore, so it also doesn't have a din of a kli rishon. Okay.
So
now certainly if you take the ladle from that pot that's not on the fire, and that's right, it's not yet soletispo, you wouldn't have a problem with irui kli rishon either.
So according to the Chumbra, for instance, if you take water from an urn and you pour it into a cup, and then from that cup to another cup, then
so that's why we always use a second cup. Now you understand, because when you most of us have a cup under the urn, and then we use that cup and fill up another cup. Why do we do that? Because the pouring into the first cup makes that first cup a kli rishon because of the concept of irui kli rishon. The fact that we pour directly from the kli rishon, which is the urn, which is on the fire, and we poured it into the first kli, that kli also has a din of a kli rishon according to those machmirim. That's why we take that first cup and pour it into a second cup. There, that second cup has a din of a kli sheni. And even there, what we do is we don't put the coffee grinds. Why don't we put the coffee grinds in the bottom of that cup? Because we're concerned because of this chumrah of the kli sheni can cook. So once we put it in the cup without anything in there, so now the walls of that second cup cool it down. Now you pour the coffee grinds in there. You haven't poured anything on top of it. This all has to do with this chumrah of the irui, of the pouring from it. So, because if you poured from even that first cup directly onto the coffee grounds, it's like you're cooking the coffee grounds. Because you poured it directly, and that's irui. So that's this concept of irui, which this Mishnah doesn't deal with. I'm bringing you what we're going to learn later on in Chulin about irui, because that's where irui kli rishon comes in. Weiter. So lo yitenu sechem tavlin. Aval noisenu letocha ka'aro tocha tamchut. Now, the big plate that you pour, so you have the kli rishon, and now you pour the food onto another plate. So that's a kli sheni. So now you can put tavlin into that. Rashi says, the kli sheni eino mavashel. The kli sheni has no power of being mavashel. You just have to make sure that irui refers to irui kli rishon refers to pouring a liquid, not solid food. So dumping something from a kli rishon which has a cholent in it, or a kugel or meat, that doesn't create by dumping it into a second pot that a kli sheni. It's only by liquid that you have the din of you. Rav Yehuda Oimer lakolu noisen chutz midavar sheyesh b'chometz v'tzir. You can pour anything into anything, except if the food has vinegar or fish juice, because those things are salty, and they, through pickling, they will cause bishul as well. We don't know what Rav Yehuda is going on. Rav Yehuda Reisha koi ulakula. Is Rav Yehuda going lakula on the Reisha? The Reisha said you can't put spices into anything, even to a kli rishon that's boiling. And maybe Rav Yehuda said you only have to worry about it if there's vinegar or tzir in there. So that's clearly a kula. Or it's going on seifa koi. When you poured the food onto a kli sheni, and maybe we're saying that which we said you could pour anything into a kli sheni, that's only when there's no vinegar or fish juice in it. So, and that would be the chumrah. So Toshma, the Tanya Ravuda l'chol ilfosin unosim, l'chol akderes roskos unosim, chutz midavar sheyesh b'chometz v'tzir. So the Rav Yehuda clearly only is arguing on the whole Mishnah, which is lakula. So he says even you certainly can you can put the tavlin into any ilfis and even into a dish that's hot, except for things that have chometz or tzir. So l'chorei is giving us the kula. Sover of Yosef Lameimar melech hareu ketavlin. Well, what about salt? Is salt like tavlin or not? Rav Yosef held that salt was like tavlin. The kli rishon bashla, salt is cooked in a kli rishon. Kli sheni loy bashla. Arle Abaya, Tani Rav Chia, melach ena ketavlin. The kli sheni nami bashla. So Rav Chia is machmir. He says melach is not like spices. It's cooked even in a cliche. But this is pliked Rav Nachman. Dam Rav Nachman, tzricha milcha bishula kedisra de Torah. Salt is needed for cooking, like salt is needed for the flesh of an ox, meaning it requires a lot of cooking. And therefore, according to Rav Nachman, it would not cook in a klisheni. It needs very high heat to cook. That's one way of learning. And Omer le Abaya, Tani Rav Chia, melach ena ketavlin, the kli rishon nami loy bashla. That it's not like spices doesn't get cooked in a kli rishon; it needs even higher heat. V'hainu dam Rav Nachman tzricha milcha bishula kedisra de Torah. Says the Shulchan Aruch, muter latek melach af b'kli rishon la'achar sharidu in ha'esh. You could put salt in a kli rishon after you've removed it from the fire, like the second version. Because Rav Nachman and Abai agree. But says the Ramah, Yesh Oimrim, Shemelach Osra af b'kli sheni, which is like the first lush. And says the Ramah, Yofel lahachmir b'dov. So it's just interesting how you see how the Rishonim, you see how the Shulchan Aruch clearly argues with the Maran Shulchan Aruch many times. And the Maran Shulchan Aruch paskin directly from the second version of the Gemara. And the Ramah said, since we have the first version, we have to be choishesh l'neh. Mishnah. Ein noisnim kli tachas haner l'kabel bos Hashem. So since we've been dealing with bishul, we're moving away a little bit, which is the concept of muktzah. So you can't put a kli under a candle to get the dripping oil that's dripping from the wick. Rashi says, Mishum de Shemen Mukzahu. The Shemen was designated for burning, and that's it. So it wasn't Muchan to be used for Shabbos. Ksavar ain't kli nittel b'Shabbos ela l'tzoch dovar nittel. You can't touch a kli only for something that's in it that could be moved. So you could never touch this kli anymore. It's going to be muktzah. Or, says Rashi, different reason, because asur levatel kli meichano. A regular kli has been designated to use for anything. All of a sudden now you're putting it under the nair. It's like kovelo mokom umechabro betitz, like as if you cemented it there. And it's like a malacha. So these are important concepts in the concept of muktzah. Now, if you did it, if you put the kli there on Erev Shabbos, it's permitted. For example, if you did it on Shabbos, you can't have a noah from the. No. Even if you put the kli there from Erev Shabbos, and on Shabbos, shemen dropped into the kli, you cannot benefit from the shemen because the shemen definitely, the fishenem and amuchim was definitely put there for the fire only. It was only for hadlaka. You can't use it. We're talking about the shemen. But if you put the kli, yeah. And then the question is, when it says mutter, what do you mean mutter? You could put it there, he says, but you won't be able to touch it. Because remember, you can't touch a kli if you have things in the kli that you can't touch. So it's interesting that it says mutter, because Tosfos argues there. Okay. Rav Chizda says you can't put a kli on Shabbos underneath a chicken to receive the egg that it's going to lay. And why are we going to put it there? So that it won't break. But once the chicken laid the egg, you're allowed to put a kli over the egg, so it won't break. Nobody will step on it. What's the nafkamina? Amar my time Rav Chizda. Ksavar tarnagoylas asir latel beit sasa ba'ashma. Normally, the chickens laid eggs like in the garbage dump. On an inclined plane, chickens didn't want to lay eggs. So therefore, hatzalah mitzuya hitiru. To save an egg on something that's going to happen because it's matzui, they were matir. So since we were concerned that once the egg drops into the garbage, people are going to step on it, you can cover it with a kli. Because that's a hatzolah mitzuya. But hatzolah she'ena mitzuya. So what was the thing? The chicken is on an inclined plane, and we're concerned that it's going to lay the egg, it's going to roll and break. So you wanted to put a kli under there. But for that kind of hatzolah, it's ena mitzuya, they didn't matir. I'll show that they were matir. Batanya, person has a barrel of grain up on his roof, and the grain is not. You hadn't taken the trumas and maisos from it, so it's tevel. And it got broke. It got broke on Shabbos and starts pouring out. Maybe kli umeniach tachteha. You can bring a kli and put it under it so that the tevel doesn't get ruined. Even though the tevel is also to eat on Shabbos, they were matir to move a kli for its benefit. And it doesn't seem to be a normal occurrence that a barrel should break. So Gemara says, no. Begul fechadati, the shchichi depaki. No, this was also a new barrel that do burst. So it's a hatzolah mitzuya. You have a candle that's giving off sparks. So you're allowed to put a kli to collect the sparks so that it won't cause a fire. Let's say it's on a tablecloth, it's going to burn. Now, nitzoitza, says Rashi, is lo metatli, and it's not a shchiach. So what do you mean not a shchiach? Nitzoitza is not a shchichi. It's a hatzola mitzuya. So for hatzola mitzuya, we're allowed to do it. Says the Shulchan Aruch, ein noismin kli tachas on Erev Shabbos. You can't put a kli under a candle that's burning on Shabbos to get the shemen. You can do it from Erev Shabbos to put that kli there, but you still can't use the shemen, like the Mishnah said. And mutter l'chapwa is kli al beitza. If a chicken laid an egg, you could put a kli over it, and you can cover other things that are muksa to prevent damage, both on Shabbos, both on Yom Tov. So something that's muksa, you can put a kli over it so that you won't come to touch it, in order to prevent it from damage. You can do that both on Shabbos and on Yom Tov. Okay.
Shabbos, everybody.
Good Shabbos,
Correct.
everybody.
Good Shabbos.
Bye.
Correct.